For quite a long time, this simple white IKEA desk has been the center of my workspace. It did the job, but after upgrading almost everything else in this room, it started to feel like the weakest part of the setup. It is quite small, completely fixed in height, and visually it no longer really fits the studio. So today, it is finally time for a serious desk upgrade, and hopefully, the chair will be the next thing to go. And this is what will replace it: the Blacklyte Atlas Lite standing desk. I went with the largest version, finished in Obsidian Black, and the difference is pretty dramatic. It gives me much more working space, matches the new studio much better, and of course, this is an electrically adjustable standing desk. But before we get here, we have to build it. The Atlas Lite arrives in two large boxes, and there is a good reason for that. One package contains the desktop itself, while the second contains the steel frame, lifting columns, feet, motors, electronics, controller, cables, hardware, and the other components required for assembly. My version is the extra-large model with a desktop measuring 180 centimeters wide and 80 centimeters deep. So this is a genuinely large desk, and the separate packaging makes everything much easier to handle. Blacklyte offers several sizes and 3 finishes: Obsidian Black, Moonstone White, and Natural Oak. For this studio, black was an obvious choice. Everything arrived well protected, and my first impression was very positive. The metal parts feel heavy and substantial, and even before assembly, this feels like a significant upgrade over my old desk. Let's start with the frame box. Inside, everything is packed in separate protective bags and cardboard sections. There are quite a few pieces, but the layout is logical, and all the main structural components are easy to identify. We have the 2 lifting columns, the long central frame sections, 2 wide feet, side supports, the control system, cables, power supply, and all the smaller hardware. Blacklyte also includes the necessary assembly instructions, and I definitely recommend keeping them nearby. The construction is not particularly complicated, but there are several different screws and mounting points, so following the correct order saves a lot of time. One thing that immediately stands out is the weight of the steel frame. This is not lightweight furniture, and that is actually reassuring for a desk this large. With the frame components unpacked, I can move on to the desktop. The top is very well protected inside its own box, which is especially important with this extra-large version. At 180 centimeters wide, even a small impact during transport could easily damage an exposed corner. The Obsidian Black surface looks clean and understated, exactly what I wanted for this room. Before starting the actual assembly, I prefer to unpack and organize everything first. It makes it much easier to see what I have, compare the parts with the diagrams, and avoid searching through packaging in the middle of the build. And with everything prepared, the actual construction can finally begin. The first major step is assembling the central frame and attaching the lifting columns. This is the structural core of the desk, so it is worth taking some time here and making sure everything is properly aligned before tightening the hardware completely. The Atlas Lite uses a dual motor system with the lifting mechanism built into the 2 columns. That means both sides of this large desktop are driven together when the desk moves up or down. For a desk this wide, that is an important design choice. You want the surface to rise evenly rather than having one side trying to pull the other side along. The frame is also adjustable to match the different desktop sizes offered in the Atlas Lite range. In my case, it needs to be extended to suit the 180 centimeter top. Once the width is correct, the frame starts to feel extremely solid. There is very little play between the main sections, and the amount of steel used here gives the whole construction a reassuringly substantial feel. Next, the 2 wide feet can be mounted to the lifting columns. These have a simple T-shaped design and create a large contact area with the floor. That matters because the desktop is both wide and deep, and once you add monitors, computers, cameras, and other equipment, stability becomes very important. The feet also include adjustable contact points underneath, which are useful if the floor is not perfectly level. After both sides are installed and tightened, the frame can stand on its own. Even at this stage, without the desktop fitted, you can get a good sense of the overall size. This is definitely designed as a proper workstation rather than a compact writing desk. Now the desktop can be placed upside down so the complete frame can be mounted underneath it. This is probably the part of the assembly where having enough floor space makes the biggest difference. The mounting positions are already prepared, so there is no need to measure everything manually or guess where the frame should sit. I simply line up the structure with the correct mounting points and secure it in place. With a desktop, this large, accurate positioning is important because you want the weight distributed evenly across both lifting columns. The outer surface of the Atlas Lite desktop uses a melamine laminate over an MDF core. It has a smooth, clean finish while still feeling substantial enough for a serious workstation. I also like the simple design. There is no unnecessary gaming style shape or aggressive decoration. Apart from the Blacklyte branding, it is a very clean black surface, which makes it suitable for both an office and a studio like mine. Once the main frame is securely attached, it is time to deal with the electrical components. Each lifting column needs to communicate with the controller, and the system also needs its main power connection. Fortunately, the connections are straightforward, and the cables are designed so that there is very little opportunity to connect something incorrectly. This is also where cable management becomes important. A standing desk constantly changes height, which means cables cannot simply hang randomly underneath it. They need enough movement to follow the desk without becoming stretched or caught in the mechanism. The Atlas Lite includes an integrated cable management solution underneath the desktop, which helps keep the power and motor cables contained rather than leaving everything exposed. For my setup, this is going to be especially useful because the finished desk will eventually carry a monitor, lighting, charging equipment, cameras, and several other powered devices. The height controller mounts underneath the front edge of the desk, where it remains easy to reach without taking up any usable desktop space. I am installing it on the right side, which works best with the way I plan to use this workstation. The controller is quite compact, but it gives direct access to both manual height adjustment and the 4 programmable memory positions. At this point, I am also checking the final cable routing and making sure nothing is close to a moving part. These small details are worth doing properly now, because once a large desk like this is turned upright and loaded with equipment, you really do not want to go back underneath it just to reorganize one cable. With the electronics connected and all the hardware checked, the assembly is almost finished. Looking underneath the desk gives a better idea of how everything is arranged. The motor connections, power system, and excess cable can all stay close to the frame instead of hanging down below the working area. This becomes much more important with a height-adjustable desk than it would be with a fixed table. When the desktop rises, every cable connected to equipment on top needs enough slack to travel with it. A good cable route therefore needs to work at both the lowest and highest positions. The clean underside is also useful for my studio because I regularly film the desk from different angles. I do not want a large bundle of cables appearing in every product shot. There is still some cable management left for me to do once all my equipment is installed, but the desk itself provides a very good starting point. I am doing one final check of the frame, connections, and mounting points before using the motors for the first time. The whole build has been quite straightforward. There are enough components that you should definitely follow the instructions, but nothing required unusual tools or any particularly difficult procedure. The most challenging part is simply the physical size and weight of the extra-large version, and that weight translates into one of the things I like most about the finished desk. It does not feel temporary. The frame feels substantial, the top is very solid, and everything is held together without any obvious fleeks or loose sections. The controller is simple, which I actually prefer. There are dedicated up and down buttons for manual adjustment, so I can stop the desk at almost any position within its available range. The Atlas Lite can move from approximately 70 centimeters at its lowest setting to around 117 centimeters at the highest. There are also 4 numbered memory buttons. That means I can find a comfortable position once, save it, and return to exactly that height without repeatedly adjusting the desk by hand. The actual movement is smooth and surprisingly quiet. Blacklyte uses 2 electric motors, and the official lifting speed is 25 millimeters per second, with a rated noise level of no more than 48 decibels. Both sides move together, and even with this very wide desktop, the motion feels controlled rather than abrupt. For everyday use, the memory positions are probably the feature I will appreciate most. I can save one height for normal seated work, another for standing, and still have additional presets available for different tasks. This is especially useful in a studio because the ideal desk height for using a computer is not always the same height I want when filming a product or working with a camera. With the desk assembled and tested, it is finally time to move it into the studio and start rebuilding the workspace. Because the surface is so much larger than my previous desk, I have much more freedom when positioning the monitor and other equipment. I can keep the main working area centered while still leaving large open sections on both sides. That extra space is valuable not only for normal computer work, but also for filming. Products can be placed directly on the desk without having to remove everything else first. And because the desk height can be changed at any time, the same surface can work for seated editing, standing work, and different camera angles. The monitor goes back into position, along with some of the equipment I normally keep on the desk. This setup is still intentionally quite minimal because I want to decide exactly where everything should live before doing the final cable management. The large black surface works extremely well with the darker studio walls and acoustic panels. It also gives me a much cleaner background for future product shots. Bright or metallic products stand out nicely against the dark desktop, and reflections are much easier to control than they were on the old white desk. Little by little, this room is starting to look much closer to the studio I originally had in mind. And once the lighting comes on, the difference becomes even more obvious. The black desk integrates naturally with the rest of the setup instead of visually dominating the room. There is enough width for the monitor, computer equipment, and filming gear, while still keeping a large part of the desktop free. For me, that balance is important. This desk is not only where I edit videos, it also becomes part of the filming environment itself. The clean shape, dark finish, and large uninterrupted surface make it much easier to build different scenes without constantly rearranging the entire studio. After assembling and using the Blacklyte Atlas Lite, I am very happy with this upgrade. The thing I notice most is not one particular feature, but how well everything works together. It is large without feeling unnecessarily complicated. The frame feels strong. The height adjustment is smooth and quiet, and the memory positions make switching between different working heights extremely convenient. For someone who spends a lot of time at a desk, being able to change position during the day is also a much more practical feature than I expected. And visually, the Obsidian Black version fits this studio almost perfectly. Compared with the small white desk we started with, this feels like a completely different workspace. I still have a few upgrades planned for this room. And yes, that old chair is definitely on the list, but the Blacklyte Atlas Lite has already made a huge difference. If you want to learn more about the desk, I will leave the relevant information in the description below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe to ScanVerdict for more detailed tech reviews. I will see you in the next one.